So welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Desmond, for joining me. My name is Johnny Perez. I work as a director of U.S. prison programs for the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, and we're a membership organization dedicated to eliminating, the torture, and inhumane human rights abuses inside of our nation's prisons, jails, in different carceral settings. So all month has been Torture Awareness Month. And we've been highlighting issues about faith, race, and justice. And I've been trying to bring people who can speak to different facets of this big monster that we come to know as, mass incarceration. And up until this point, our conversation has been focused on the people inside. And today we want to have a conversation about disenfranchisement. What happens after you come out? We live in a society that not only holds people accountable, but the way of holding them accountable is actually to disenfranchise them and to keep them from participating in all the full rights that everyone else in society has. There's other layers there about how the power stays in power, who it affects most, who it doesn't affect most, how, our lawmakers, who they represent, and there's some other layers that I really hope to kind of flesh out, during this conversation. And to help me arrive, to a place to deepen our understanding, I invited Desmond Meade, who is the president of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, which is organized for its work around felony disenfranchisement. And you may have heard about Desmond in connection with Amendment 4 and how, the recent legislation not too long ago that actually allowed for 1.4 million people with histories of incarceration to be able to have the right to vote again, which is important. Not only in the state of Florida, but really, across the country. So, first of all, super congratulations for that. Desmond, as a person, who is directly impacted by incarceration and knows the understanding and importance of having a vote, the work that you're doing is so important, especially when it comes to shifting and changing power. So before we got on this call, you said that you were on the move, you were on the way, so I want to bring you on, introduce yourself, of course, and then give us a little bit about what you're doing actually right now. I see this work never stops. You're actually on the move right now, so I appreciate that.
Yo, what's up, Johnny? How you doing, man?
Good.
Good. Hey, listen, you said something important, right? You said this work never stops, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I say two things to that, right? First of all, yeah, this work never stops, man, because this work is about our lives, and our lives never stop. Every single day that we live, whether it's on the weekday or the weekend, as people who've been formerly incarcerated or convicted, we're facing these challenges. The obstacles that we face, don't take a time off, don't take vacation or any holidays, and at the end of the day, because it's our life, this is something that we do every day, which lends to the other piece that it's not just work. This ain't a job for us, man. This is a way of life, man, because it impacts our lives in such a meaningful and a deep way. And that's why right now I'm on the bus, and I'm apologize if the reception go in and out. Got my folks trying to also call in, so in case I lose video, that I can still talk on the phone. But yeah, I'm on the way right now. I'm on the Amendment 4 tour bus,
Nice.
Headed down to Key West, Florida. And in this bus right now, I got it loaded up with masks, sanitizers, and information about how to register to vote, right? And so we're going down there. We're going to make sure that we service the homeless population. We also going to make sure that we distribute masks to people who are incarcerated in the county jail down there in Key West. And also the guards that protect, that guards them, because, we want to make sure that we could minimize the risk of contracting COVID-19. And so, we might as well, if once we get to Key West, the beautiful part about this, man, is that I'm going to be proud to officially announce, as a matter of fact, you're the first person that's hearing this, bro, that we will have covered every portion of the state of Florida as it relates to distributing protective equipment.
Wow.
People who've been impacted by the criminal justice system, as well as our homeless population.
Nice.
West, which is the southernmost part, to Pensacola and Jacksonville, which is the northeast and northwest west northernmost part,
Mhm.
all points in between. We will have completed a full circuit of the state of Florida.
Wow,
And so
man,
Florida is not a small state.
amazing work. Yeah.
So, and it's an enormous task that I was actually able to accomplish. And so I'm proud of that, bro.
No, speaking of the state, and tremendous work, man. Congratulations, man. You know, I tell you, anytime I think about Florida, I think about you, and then also, you know, as you know, I've been doing this work for about 6 years now professionally, and then of course, you know, on the inside, I think I was an advocate long before I got the title, you know. But to your point, like how Florida is so big, and I'm constantly thinking about how to organize people and how to harness the power that bringing these people together in order to impact and make change. You know, did you find, like, when you were organizing folks for Amendment 4, did you find that the state, well, let me ask this, how did the geography of the state impact the way that you organized around Amendment 4? That's what I want to ask you.
Wow. Well, I can tell you the first thing, right? It hit my pockets real hard, right? Well, let me tell you, when I started, bro, I wasn't getting a paycheck and nothing, bro.
Yeah.
I was surviving off student loans, and I tell folks, man, I traveled over 50,000 miles each year on my car.
Mm-hmm.
50,000 miles without even leaving the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm traveling from the Keys all the way to Pensacola,
Mm-hmm.
all points in between. And so it was an extreme, I mean, just the geographical size of the state of Florida is challenging, man. You're talking about, from the time it takes you to drive from Key West to Pensacola, you would have driven through 5 states. Florida's just that long. But it also, because of the size, um, a lot of folks say Florida is divided into 3 different states, right? South Florida, North Florida, and then, of course, Central Florida. And each of those territories carry certain distinctions that, that really makes it challenging to actually promote or organize a broad um, concept or broad campaign over, because typically what people in the South would gravitate to, people in the North won't. It's like polar opposites, and then Central Florida can go from one extreme to the other. And so uh, the challenges was geographically, as well as just the mindset of individuals that resided in the state. And of course, in South Florida, you have a heavy influx of not only immigrants, but just people from the Latin American countries. It's heavy there. Afro,
Latino?
yeah. Well, not only Afro Latino, but also there's the Afro community, because you're talking about like Trinidad, Jamaica,
Okay.
Antigua, St. Kitts,
Mm-hmm.
of course, the Bahamas,
Mm-hmm.
and the Virgin Islands, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
you have a heavy Afro Caribbean community presence in South Florida, and you mix that all up, man. You got like some spicy gumbo or something that's there. And then
Yeah.
in Central Florida, you would see a significant influx of Puerto Ricans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, of course, North Florida is kind of like pure vanilla.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have those different mixes and different cultures, different perspectives, different political ideologies, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So
Which brings me, that was my next question in thinking about, because you have such a wide range. I mean, Florida, Florida has a lot of policies also that, has just drawn attention to the state from, from stand your ground laws, of course, et cetera. But just thinking about what were some of the ideological challenges that you faced, right, in getting us our voting rights back, right? I'm sure there were plenty of people, say, yeah, definitely those people should get their time, to get their voting rights back. But then you also had another class of people who were like, wait a minute, let's not be too quick to do this. And I'm wondering how you convinced them to kind of come along a little bit, to eat some of the gumbo. How you get them to eat the gumbo?
I think that even when we're talking about policies, right? addressing policy challenges or policy needs. I think that what a lot of times we seem to forget or overlook is that a person's either implicit biases, right, or political preferences tend to contaminate, right, people's views on stuff, right? So let me tell you straight up, man.
Yeah, please.
And I think that and this was one of the successes of our campaign, was that we was able to thread the needle and connect people along the lines of some humanity, along some values that everybody shared, right? So for instance, just to ask somebody a question like this, how many of you right now in the audience, right, would raise your hand and say that you don't ever want to be forgiven for anything that you've ever done for the rest of your life? Right?
Nobody's gonna raise their hand.
Nobody's gonna raise their hand.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Well, one person did, but this guy was, I don't know. But out of all the thousands of people that I posed that question to, I don't care if they was white, black, Latinx, or young, old, rich, poor, white, whatever. It didn't matter, right? They all agreed on that. Yeah. And what happens and what contaminates that pure value is implicit biases or partisanship. That's what contaminates it and clouds that simple value that is shared by everyone else, right? And I could see that like across the board. And so the thing that we did was that we were very intentional in elevating the campaign or our issues above the biases and above the partisan politics. And we kept it about people, right? And kept it about these values. And it was a value that we kept pounding and pounding and pounding. When the debt is paid, it's paid. There's no one that we knew of that would have to pay a house note or a car note, that when they pay it off in full, they're not expecting more bills to come in the mail, right? And so that concept of when the debt is paid resonated with so many folks, right? And we were able to move it across, whether you was white and lived in northern Florida and leaned more conservative, or whether you were a person of color that lived in South Florida and was a little bit more progressive, either one know that when a debt is paid, and either one knows about this concept about forgiveness, redemption, and restoration, especially when it's applied to themselves. The challenge and what the problem was in the past is that when people, if people were to close their eyes and think about criminal justice reform, let's be honest, the image that's going to come to them is the African-American guy, right? It's not going to be an Afro-Latino. There's going to be an African-American guy with probably dreads in his hair, teeth full of gold.
But we're seen as more dangerous, right? We're seen as more dangerous. We're seen, we're painted in the media, so yeah.
But we're the ones, but here's the thing. We're the ones that are just intimately connected to crime and criminal justice reform. And just as if someone were to talk about immigration and they close their eyes, right? And they would think what? They would actually get even more detail when they close their eyes and be, Mexican, right? But there are so many more countries other than Mexico in which immigrants are coming to this country. And there's a lot of immigrants that come to this country that don't look nowhere near like a Mexican and it looks more like me, right? And so I think what happens is that when people think of criminal justice reform or they think of immigration, they just only think of a certain race of people or a certain class of people, which allows them to separate that class or that race of people from themselves. And once that separation occurs, that allows for the dehumanization to actually kick into effect. And therefore, there's not a greater amount of concern about how those people are treated, and so one of the things that we did that was successful was we took felon disenfranchisement from a problem for those people and we convert it into a problem for all of us.
Everybody. Yeah, this is a problem for everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's our problem.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's our problem as a community. It's our problem as citizens. I mean, at the end of the day, people just had to be reminded. And let me tell you the best way to do that.
What's that?
So when I approach him, I'm not gonna tell him my story. I don't need to tell him my story. I just need to ask him one question.
What's that?
Do you know anyone you love who's ever made a mistake in their life?
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And so what happens is when you say that, then the image that comes to a person's mind when they think about this policy or this issue is not those other people, but rather someone who they love and they care about. You see what I'm saying? And so, because as long as it's those other people, then anybody can come in and say how bad those people are, or how undeserving those people are, or how less than human those people are. But when it's someone you love, nobody can't come in and tell you that your son is not deserving, that your son is less than human. That, you know what I'm saying? They can't do that because that's your son.
That's interesting though. It brings up this question though, around like there's, you know, like for example, right? And I'm here close to New York, right? The head of the union, the correctional officers union in New York, you know, he has family that has actually experienced solitary confinement, has family that's actually been incarcerated. But he also uses that as a crutch to continue the opposition around the changes that he knows and even admitted that needs to change. You know, or sometimes we've had legislators, you know, say, hey, well, like they'll differentiate by crime. Well, those people had to do something real bad. I mean, this is in relation to solitary, but wait a minute, like my son wasn't that bad. He only did this, or he only did that, or you know what? Well, that's only for violent, quote unquote, people who are violent offenders and not those non-violent offenders. So, you know, did you see
I push back against that violent, non-violent distinction. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I totally push back against that. There's no, I don't think that there's any, I have not seen any research or studies that even show that that distinction between violent and non-violent is beneficial or serves any real purpose, other than it being a political a political crutch the people use to not go as far as they need to go with certain policies. But I'm interested to know about this individual who claimed he had family members in solitary confinement, who those family members are. Is it a cousin that he didn't like to begin with? You know?
Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of like I was peeling back. Yeah, like so that might be their way.
What I need people to say, right? And I don't care what type of policy it is, because I'm gonna tell you, I think a secret ingredient, and I hope who's ever looking at this, you know, if they never thought of this before, that they use this, right? Because I had somebody ask me, well, what type of policy would you use around juvenile justice, right? Or solitary confinement? And you know what? Let me tell you, I'm not that expert, right? Like, matter of fact, that's when I mentioned your name. A few other folks, you know, I talk about you a lot, Johnny, man, because I'm really, like, admire the work that you're doing.
Appreciate that.
But this is what I tell them, right? If you want to know where to start from, let me tell you the best place. Imagine if it was your son or daughter. How would you want them to be treated? So if your son and daughter, as a juvenile, did something wrong, how would you want them to be treated? And that would give you a start on the type of policies you need to implement. And so for that person or whatever, how would you want your son and daughter to be in solitary confinement, to be exposed to those conditions? And if not, then you know where to start from. You know, how do you want the one who you love the most to be treated? And that, if you set policies based on that, then we may be having some policies that folks can live with. Because it's based on your love, right? Not on hatred, not on disdain, right? Not on exclusionary concepts or whatever, but it's based on love. And believe it or not, isn't that kind of strange to say that? That it was punishment based on love and not hate?
So here's the thing. I got to push back just a little bit, only in the sense that, so there are people who are going to say, yeah, you know what? This is messed up, Johnny. This is messed up, Desmond. This is messed up, John, Jane Doe. Like, you know, we really need to do something, and they'll champion our bills, right? They'll come out like, you know, they'll get, you know, and then there will be legislators who'll say, regardless of that feeling, they say, I'm not going to co-sponsor this bill. I'm not going to do it. So I'll give you a real life example. In New York, the bill in New York has, breaking up a little bit. Okay, I still got you. Sorry about that.
I'm seeing you.
Okay. Yeah, good. So
yeah.
So, you know, it's like the bill in New York around solitary confinement already has all the votes that it needs in order for it to pass, right? The leadership has to introduce the bill, and then the governor, of course, is going to do what he does. Now, up until last January, we had one of the biggest lobby days in New York that we've had. We brought about over 800 people up there in the name of, you know, ending solitary. And up until that point, I felt that empathy was enough, that if I could just get people to put themselves in my shoes and feel what I feel, you know, they would be compelled to want to do something, want to change it. But I really walked away from that experience asking myself, okay, at what point do we just vote them out? Because you're just not doing what we want you to do, right? And so, you know, and then get somebody else in it. That's a whole process. But I said, like, at what point, you know, as an organizer, do you say, okay, you know what? Maybe this legislator's role as it relates to this legislation, they just have to go all together versus trying to convince them to change. And you know what? Let's get them out of here. And whether that means me showing up at the you know, to the meeting, already knowing how many votes this person was already voted in by last, you know, session, and having those votes ready. You know, did you feel like you had to, you know, just getting you to react to some of that? Like, at what point do you get them and say, you know what, this?
Yes, I don't even consider that a pushback. I was waiting on the pushback, Johnny.
Oh.
You didn't give me the pushback.
No, it felt like, okay, so it felt like you were saying, hey, if they can empathize, like get to a place of empathy, like that's a good place to start and get there. But it's like not everybody's gonna have that starting point, and you may have people say, you know what, this is what it is.
That's when. Oh yeah. So no, what I told you was, I mean, and I stand by that, you know, because that is someone who, and remember, I came from the place of when someone wants to know what needs to be done or how to do it, that's where you get them to start from. But there's some people that is not wanting to know that. You know, one of the things that COVID-19 and even what's been going on with these killings and police brutality and the racism around this country. One of the things I tell folks, man, is that one of the good things that comes out of this is that it helps people to see that there's a clear distinction between the politician and the public servant, right? When politicians are involved, people die. When public servants are involved, we got a chance to live and our community have a chance to thrive. And let me tell you the main difference between a politician and a public servant. A politician will not put people above their partisan politics. And that's why people die. And that's why stuff don't get moved, right? Strictly because of partisan reasons, right? But when you have public servants, no matter if they're Democrat, Republican, or whatever, when you have a person that is a public servant, in certain cases, he will put the needs of people before his party, right? That's a public servant. And we'll see those distinctions play out when you're coming with these policies. If there's a person that all of the data, all of the research and the stories are there that tells you that that policy is wrong and they still won't champion it, then you know that tells you that what's more important to them is their party and not the people, right? And the party didn't put them in office, it's the people that did. So now you're really what they call that dereliction of duty. You know what I'm saying? And it's another phrase that they use in the legal community. Breach of their fiduciary duty, right? To to the people that put them in office. And so, yeah, then we move to plan 2, which is yours, right? That Theodore Roosevelt
Turn the
once
heat
said,
up a little bit.
speak softly and carry a big stick,
Yeah.
right? And that big stick is our vote, right? That when people don't want to hear, because I don't think I have to yell at a politician. I don't think I even have to beg a politician,
Talk
because a
about
politician is supposed to be a public servant. As a matter of fact, they're an employee of the people. Our tax dollars pay their salary. We elect them. We choose, right, them to do a job for us, right? Because if we take it all the way back to the basics, that the power all rests within us, and we acquiesce some of that power, right, in order to form a society that we can live in, right, together, right, and we appoint certain people to actually facilitate, right, the governance of that society that we created, right, and if that person is not doing what we have appointed them to do, then it is well within our power, right, to give them a pig slip. You know, Donald Trump is good. Before he became president, he was good with one or two words. He like, "You're fired," right? But guess what? We can say that too. You're fired. And so we just get rid of the politicians and make sure that we elect more public servants. Because let me tell you, at the end of the day, what we're seeing is that voting is the difference between life and death. And this is not just a saying anymore, because it is actually played out in our very faces. You were up in New York and you've seen this. We got friends, we got family, right, who have died because of the actions of politicians.
That's real. That is
right?
real.
And so we don't have to tolerate that anymore.
That's
You know,
real.
we got people who've been brutalized by police because of the actions or inactions of politicians, right? And so we don't have to deal with that anymore. We got state prosecutors that take 74 days, 74 days to charge somebody, and it's only because of public outcry. But they would charge, not only would they charge us, they would stack the charges on us in a heartbeat.
In a matter of hours.
You know, so in a matter of hours, to force us to take a plea to something that we didn't even do. Right?
No,
And those people are elected, right? And they do that not because they care about the people. They do that because they care more about the politics. And we could get rid of those people.
And I think that's one of the major reasons why we're seeing so many people right now, especially our young people, like really taking to the streets in ways in which, you know, some might argue we haven't seen before, because the public outcry is just that much right now, right? You know, there's like people around the world that are protesting, and not to be a cynic, but you know, there's part of me that also says, well, like we've been here before, right? Like we've marched before, we've done all of these things before, and not to say that they don't have value, we should continue doing that. But I think the question right now that I've been constantly asking myself, and people that I've interviewed and talked to, and people in my own space, is, you know, how can we take this moment, right? How can we take all of the energy? Let me say, how can we take all of the energy that is happening right now? There is a lot of energy, you know, a lot of energy, a lot of willingness from people to want to do something. You know, philanthropy is like, hey, what do we do? The media is like, hey, what are the solutions? You know, advocates are trying to figure out which is the solution and all of these things. But my question is, how do we take the energy that is happening right and translate that into exactly what you're saying? Because my opinion is that, you know, if we don't come out in record numbers and hold the legislators accountable to the degree in which you just said, then we'll just be repeating 4 more years of this, or maybe 8 more years of this. Like, who knows? But just so what is some of you thinking about that?
Okay. All right, so you just help me on this now, okay, Johnny?
Yeah.
So I got three areas or 3 groups of people that I'm going to talk about how we can help, right?
Awesome.
All right, so number 1, a regular everyday people like me and you, a Pookie and Ray Ray that's out there in the streets, right? That's one group of people. We have donors, right? And then we have the establishment, right? You with me? Can I just separate them like that for a second?
Gotcha.
All right, so for everyday people like me and you, one of the things I say is that it takes less time to fill out a voter registration form than it does to make a protest poster. All right? You hear me? All right.
Yeah, hold
It
on.
takes less
Say
time.
that one more time. Say that one more
It
time.
takes less time to fill out a voter's registration form than it does to fill out to create a protest poster.
That's real.
It takes less time to vote, right, than it does to march. And in some cases, they got a lot of places you can vote by mail. So guess what? Only thing you gotta do is walk to the mailbox, right? And that thing right there, all right, let me tell you, because there's a lane for everything. And so, bro, I am like really loving the protests and all of that, but I know that there have to be something that complements that, right? Right? And then it has to be something that complement that. So you protest, then you take action by voting, and then you follow up and hold people accountable, right? Those three things got to work together. All right. And so for people like me and you, it's like, how do we now take that energy from the protest and turn it into people showing up at the polls and really now having an impact on who are these people that would implement or help shape the policies that we need to be shaped, right? That's one. To the donors. The donors, what they can do is not always run to the brightest, shiniest object, because a lot of time the brightest and shiniest object are just the ones that know how to talk a good game, but have little to no experience about what's really happening on the ground or really even about the issues. All right. A lot of these bright, shiny objects might be able to tap into a Johnny Perez, right? And suck out all of the knowledge that they can out of Johnny Perez and try to regurgitate that, right, to appear as if they know certain things. But the reality is that they're just really, not, I would say, just repeating, right, what they've heard, or maybe what they've read in the book, but none of that comes from practical experience. And so donors or funders need to find the leaders like you and so many other, right, that is actually doing like Adnan, right, that's doing the work, or at least trying to do the work, and invest in leadership that's at the grassroots level, right? That's something that could be happening, and not just no. That's almost like, put it like this, right? You remember how there was a big flare up about how when stuff happened in Haiti, that so much money was given, like say to the Red Cross, and about like 70% of that was tied up in taking care of people's salaries and stuff, and none of that really got to the people in Haiti, really, or maybe it was other organizations that was saying, okay, we're going to provide relief, right? And when people went to give to that, instead of the groups that was on the ground struggling, and all the millions and millions of dollars got caught up in everything else but where it was supposed to be, a help. And so that's one. Now, for the other establishment, here's what, this is what I told somebody the other day, right? Is that when you talk about what's been going on over the last several months with racism, especially as it relates to policing practices, right? And even prosecutorial practices. You with me? Now, here's the question. Here's the $1 million question. What group of people have the most intimate knowledge about the policing practices and prosecutorial practices? What group of people have the most knowledge? But the people who have been impacted by this injustice system. Because let me tell you something. If you ain't never been arrested, you can't speak to the brutality of a police officer. I tell you what, I've been beat down. I've had the butt of a gun smashed on the back of my head and split my skull. I've had, when I've been down on the ground, handcuffed, that officers took their combat boots and just kept taking turns kicking me in the head, not in the leg or in the rib, but in the head, right? Repeatedly, all right. And then after after I get medical attention and I'm end up at the county jail, there's a slew of charges that I get just because I got my butt whooped.
Well, they got to justify the beating. They got to justify the beating.
There you go. And that's when you see a battery of a Leo, you know what that is that don't mean that they did anything to the officer. That means that the officer whooped they behind and they got to justify it. But the point that I'm trying to make, Johnny, is this, that there's no other group of people that can speak really intimately as to the brutality faced by law enforcement and their aggressive policing and arresting practices, right? But people like you and I who have that intimate interaction. But the problem I'm seeing is that all the discussions that I'm looking at on the television, they're talking to people other than us, right? It's people other than us that's actually trying to set policies or try to create a narrative when the people who need to be actually setting that narrative are people like you and I who actually had the most experience. That's just like somebody, that's like that it's a big issue about abortion and the only people on the news are men talking about what needs to be done.
I think we've seen that.
I mean, really, right?
No, yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah, that's
right?
real. Yeah.
So you're talking about reproductive rights, and all of the commentators, right, and all of the people that are giving the suggestions of what policies should be made are all men. Just think about that. And that is what we're seeing now. And so for that mainstream, if they really want to be impactful, right, then you have to stop practicing social malpractice. You know what social malpractice is, right?
No, but I got a feeling I'm about to learn. Don't tell me, what is it?
So right now, hey, listen.
Sounds like somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Listen, you got a headache or something wrong with your body, and you go to the doctor to get it checked out, right? All right, and as soon as you walk into the office, the doctor starts prescribing medication to you, right, or injecting you with stuff, right? Now, does it matter that that doctor got all kinds of diplomas on his wall from MIT and from Johns Hopkins, and he's been Surgeon of the Year twice, and all? Does any of that matter? No, that none of that matters, because if that doctor prescribes medication to you or starts injecting you with something before even having a conversation with you, he's engaging in medical malpractice. All right, and so what I mean by social malpractice is, how in the hell could someone start prescribing a remedy for the problem that we're facing in our community, or the problem that people impacted by the justice system is facing? How could you start prescribing fixes to without even having the people, very same people at the doggone table? You haven't had a conversation with us. So you can't prescribe nothing to us, and if you try to, it's called social malpractice. And I don't care how many degrees you have, and this is a beautiful part, Johnny. As you going through your studies and everything, one of the things I know is that every degree that they have, you can get, but every degree you have, they can't get. How many people can have a degree of solitary confinement? Surviving that? How many people?
I wouldn't call it a degree, but I hear what you're saying.
But you get what I'm. Listen, I tell people I have 2 doctor's degrees. I have a doctor of law degree, and I have a doctor of the streets degree. Being homeless, being addicted to drugs, getting ready to jump in front of a train. Now, unless somebody else can go through that, that's one degree they can't have. That's an experience that they don't have. And so I am a subject matter expert in some things that they're not. So therefore, who should be talking about, what type of policies and programs that we can use to help the weakest in our communities, or the people that's been impacted by our injustice system, or been impacted by addiction? Can't be somebody that ain't never experienced addiction before.
And also,
what they learned in the books.
And to your point too, I think it's not only the individual, but let's take the scope back a little bit, and also communities. Especially right now, since we're having a big conversation about defunding police departments, but I think the general public doesn't understand that, hey, yes, it's defunding police departments, but it's really about investing in communities. And for us to truly do that in a way in which is effective, you have to involve those communities in figuring out what are the best investments that can be made in the community as designed and advertised by them.
Johnny, then at the end of the day, then we need to figure out how to better communicate that. You know what I'm saying? We really do. And that's being real, If you say defund, then that elicits something. I mean, that's just like me, to me, saying, lock up something, right? Oh, but I don't really mean lock up. What I really mean is this. Then say what you mean. Let's reinvest. Let's reinvest in our communities. Oh, come up with something. But it's a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge. And unfortunately, the essence what this move, the movement to defund, I hate even using that word, man, to be honest with you. But the movement behind the effort to reallocate investments, right, from law enforcement back into prevention models and to the community, is going to have some distractors because of the way how there's some folks that's just going to take advantage and try to mischaracterize certain things.
That's the nature of movements, right? Like you're gonna have that.
You got to be strategic.
Yeah.
You know, we can't play checkers while the opponent is playing chess.
Yeah.
That just won't work, man. You know,
Yeah.
so we just have to be more strategic with it. But you know, that's I mean, that is ideal. I think that deep. I think go back to that thing I told you about the policy piece, right?
Mhm.
So remember I told you about just thinking about someone you love making that mistake, right? And how you would want them to be treated could be a basis from starting or foundation to start thinking about policy changes. Well, this is the same thing what we talk about with reinvestment, right?
Yeah.
Because I could ask a mother that when your son, that's Johnny. So
She
when
just
your
passed on.
son, when
But
your
yeah.
son, say your son is passing out, right? Who do you want showing up at your house? Mental health specialist or police with guns drawn?
That's
Right?
right. Yeah.
And so the thing is, in every policy or any critical discussion, the key I think is getting people not to look at it from a perspective of it being happening to other people or the otherings, you know what I'm saying? But rather get them to think about this from a personal perspective as if someone that they love was the focus of that policy, right? And so who do you want coming to your house when your son or your daughter maybe took a bad hit of drugs or something and is tripping? Well, how do you want them to be treated? Do you want them to be tased repeatedly and slammed to the ground and beat down? That how you want your son and daughter to be treated?
Yeah.
Or would you rather have a mental health professional come and diffuse that? And I'm going to tell you more often than not, people are going to say, I don't want the police coming with their guns in my house, you know, at the end of the day. And so we walk down each of these policies, each of these areas in which we'll be able to reinvest funding. You know, you ask them, you know, if your kid is out there exercising their First Amendment right? Do you want the police to roll down your street with tanks, armored personnel carriers, right, with military grade weapons shooting at your son, right? Is that what you want? You know, and so I think it's that so many for so often when we try to get people to think about policy recommendations, they're thinking externally and not internally, and because they're thinking externally, that, like I said, that there's a space there that allows for partisan politics to come and contaminate a common bond that is there, and people don't even realize that they share the same common bond.
You know, that brings me, and I know we're almost coming to an end here. There's a question in here that I want to get to. What is the status of the voter registration among previously incarcerated people in Florida? What barriers have you encountered, and how are you addressing the barriers?
Wow, so that's a good question. That helps me speak to one thing, right? So, I remember when I first started, I was under the impression, right, that felon disenfranchisement only impacted black folks, right? And I also thought that like everybody was locked up, right? What I've since discovered, I think this even is in line with the national trend. Here in Florida, I think less than 25% of everyone who's convicted of a felony offense is even sentenced to prison, right? And so you're talking about good 75% of a population over the course of a year, each year, are people that are actually out in the community, not even in prison to begin with, right? But yet they face a lot of the same challenges. Now they don't have that same trauma as people who have been like locked up behind bars
Mhm.
some time, but they still face some of those challenges for jobs, assistance, housing, education, all because of a felony conviction. Those collateral consequences are still there. I say that, I know that was a long way to answer that question, but I wanted to make sure we'll be clear with that, because so many times we get caught up in that matrix thinking, oh, it's only people that are locked up, right, that are getting their rights restored. Oh no, it's anyone with a felony conviction. So a few weeks ago, a federal judge issued a ruling
Yes.
that basically said that costs and fees are
Mhm.
unconstitutional because
Yes.
they operate sort of like a tax, right?
Mhm.
That they really didn't have any, and this is my input right here. They really didn't have any punitive value. It wasn't really part of a sentence. It wasn't attached to the crime a person was convicted of committing, right? However, um, and so the costs and fees are unconstitutional. They threw it out, and that's overwhelming majority of the cases here in Florida. So that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But then the judge went further and said, "All right, so those fines and those and restitution, I could see where that's connected to the crime a person committed, right? And yeah, a person should pay that. However, if a person can't afford to pay it, then a person's inability to pay should not be a barrier to them being able to vote. So
Exactly.
therefore, the question that came out of that was, well, how can you tell if a person can't pay,
Mm.
right? And so the judge was like, okay, I'll give you an easy solution.
Hmm.
If at the time of a person's last trial, if they was too poor to be able to hire a private attorney,
Yeah.
right? If
Nice.
they didn't have a public defender or
That's a
court
good one.
appointed
I didn't
lawyer,
know that.
oh,
Yeah.
that's it right there. That's you they meet that criteria. Okay. If they can't afford to pay a private lawyer, how you expect them to pay whatever you want? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
hey, let's check it out. If you
Yeah.
got a public defender in your last case, no matter how much you owe. So it could be $1 million that you owe
Yeah.
in a fine or even in a restitution. If you had a public defender that indicates that you are too poor to be able to satisfy that legal financial obligation,
Mhm.
and being poor is not a barrier
Mhm.
to being able to register to vote. So
Yeah.
guess what? You can go and register to vote just like everybody else. You
Good.
don't have to fill out any special form or special requests or none of that. You just like everybody else. Go to the supervisor of elections office, register to vote, go online, register to vote, right? Call it a day, and then make sure you show your behind up at the polls. So that's where we at right now. We believe that out of the 1.4 million returning citizens that was immediately impacted by Amendment 4, I would say approximately 900,000,
Mhm.
right, can immediately register to vote right now without
Yes.
any concerns about any legal financial obligations.
So part of that work is for folks who are watching who have relationships or roots in Florida. You know,
Oh,
part of the work is to get these folks to get registered.
you got
Uh,
to send
so
them to
that way.
us, man. You've got to send them to us. It's very easy. All the person have to do is text the word register
Mhm.
to the number 82623. I'll say it one more time. Text the word register, register, to the number 82623, right? And if they could text that,
Yeah.
we'll get them signed up to and register to vote. If a person have any kind of concerns, they can still text that same number, but instead of register, they would text fines. And we have a crew already on standby that would ask her to answer any lingering questions. We've partnered up with attorneys across the state of Florida who've given their time pro bono to help folks out. But at the end of the day, it's very simple. If a person had a public defender or court appointed attorney, they can register to vote. If a person only had fees or costs, they can register to vote.
Mhm.
If a person had any financial obligation that was converted and it was converted to a civil lien, which
Mhm.
means that it's now been taken out of the criminal realm and put in the civil realm, those criminal obligations have been satisfied, they can register to vote,
Nice.
right? So it's open season right now, and the most important work that we can do, in addition to our humanitarian efforts, is to get people registered to vote,
Yeah.
and that's why we're headed down to Key West, Florida, to not only just give out the mask, but to make sure that people can. We got codes that people can scan, they can register to vote, find out more about the order.
Nice. And what am I, as we round up, Desmond, do you think that you think there needs to be more of us running for office?
Of course. Of course. No, let me tell you, yeah, because we bring a certain level of experience and expertise, right, that is sorely missing, right? And so when you look at the number of millionaires and that are in office right now, right, and then you look at some of their origins, right, you see that a significant number of them didn't do nothing, right? They haven't been through anything, and when you haven't experienced the kind of things we've experienced, it's hard to empathize, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to really connect, right? And you've been conditioned to operate at a certain level that is not conducive to placing people over politics. That's not conducive to really addressing the needs of the people. That is not conducive to understanding that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and that is so with our society, that if we are to become a better community or a state or a better country, that we must empower the weakest among us, right? A rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so, yeah, I think that because of the limited experience of people who we have elected, and that goes to some campaign finance reform discussions, because how the system is set up now, you have to be almost a doggone millionaire to run for office. But
Yeah.
every now and then, we'll get bright spots like AOC, who was a regular everyday person. We had a teacher, a principal, I think up your way, that just got elected in office. And so every now and then, we would get some regular folks that's able to get in there. But for the most part, you would have to have significant amount of resources to actually even run for office. But if we can actually revamp how our campaign finance system works, that gives us an opportunity to get people like you, man, in office. But yeah, a whole lot more. We got a lot of us that's actually.
Yeah. Desmond. You did say he's driving. Yeah, he's going through them. He's going through those. Let's go through those Florida Keys. Make sure we get that PPE equipment there. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. So, yeah, Desmond is doing really great work. One of the challenges that he's facing right now is actually having people to get registered. So on one hand, yes, we definitely have folks who now are re-enfranchised in a sense and now have the ability to vote again. But that vote can't be fully harnessed until we register these people. So the work in Florida does have to include registering these folks and ensuring that these people not only have already registered, but also have access to being able to vote. I'm not going to hold you any longer. I'm going to say my next conversation is actually with Mark Levin, who works over at Right on Crime, the Texas Policy Foundation, Public Policy Foundation. And we'll be having a conversation about solitary confinement, specifically separations between punishment and. Desmond, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. I'm back.
Okay, yeah, it's all good. I know. I was telling folks, I know you're traveling and things like that, and going through it,
Yeah.
and kind of, employing folks to register, to make sure that we find folks that ensure that we register them, and how, on one hand, it's like really good that we have, all of these folks now who are really ready, willing, and able to vote, but it's super important and critical, especially as it relates to building power, to get these folks registered and then going down there the day of. One of the last questions I want to ask you before we go out, Desmond, I know you're traveling. I get a lot of questions around like this idea that that the presidential election is the most important election You know, and as a person that's worked on a number of different elections and really like shifting power in the state, you know, what are some other elections that people should be really critical of and mindful of right in their localities that are just as important as a presidential election? You know, like many people don't know that DAs, for example, get elected. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. I mean, to be totally honest with you, I think that local elections are more important than the presidential elections, especially when you're talking about the issues, the policies that impact you directly, right? And so we feel the impact of what local mayors, the local councilmen, the local governor, the state rep, or the state senator. Those policies we feel immediate impact. But even deeper than that, especially when you're looking at what's going on right now throughout the country, man, I think the most important elections are the ones that involve a state attorney or district attorney, right? Or the ones that involve the sheriff or chief of police. The ones that, a lot of people actually ignore or don't even think of are those races that involve judges, right? When you're talking about the criminal justice or the criminal injustice system, right? Those are the main actors right there that have the most significant impact, right, on people's lives, right? How are the police treating you? You know what I'm saying? What are their policing practices like? You can actually impact that through voting. How are prosecutors using their discretion to decide whether or not to charge somebody, or decide whether or not to direct file a juvenile, right? Or decide whether or not to seek bail, right? Or, you know, decide whether or not to actually challenge a person's motion for some, say, compassionate release, you know. One of the things that used to really kill me, especially, and you've seen it a little bit in the movie Just Mercy, is how many times have we seen where someone has been wrongly convicted of something, right? And all the evidence is there, like, you know, black and white, right there, slapping you in the face, and the prosecutor refuses to admit that they made a mistake and want to continue, right? And that person, that we have an opportunity to impact that. Those are the things that impact me much more than what other presidents have done, you know. And so, yeah, I think that people need to understand, and we've seen the impact of it, because people turn out in presidential years and then non-presidential years, or you know, midterms, they don't turn out with the same vigor. And to be honest with you, they need to turn out even more during midterms, because that's when the majority of the people who are on the ballot are local, right? And so, like this year, our people focus isn't on necessarily on the president. I believe in trickle up, what I call trickle up voting, right? And that is that if people come out for local election, they'll vote the entire ticket, right? But a lot of times when people come out for the presidential election, they just vote the top of the ticket and leave the bottom empty, right? And that's not good. That's not a good practice. And so we're working from the bottom up. We're working with returning citizens, people who've been impacted. And here's the deal: when we're dealing with them around the issues of criminal justice reform or around a local state attorney, sheriff, and judicial races, we're talking to them about issues that they have intimate knowledge of. It's not something far-fetched. You know, I'm not talking to Pookie and Ray Ray about middle-class tax cuts or tax breaks or all these other stuff that I don't even understand. You know what I'm saying? I really don't. And I got a doggone law degree. You know? So I'm just talking about life. I'm talking about
tax people understand the tax code. Trust me.
I know, right?
They understand it. How's that?
You know, but I can tell you what I can talk about: not being able to get a job, you know, because I have a felony conviction. Indeed. Not being able to get a safe and affordable housing. Not being able to get a student loan right? Because I had a trafficking charge or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Not being able to buy a house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because 20 years ago, I had a conviction or get occupation license. I want to start my own company. I want to start my own business. I'm tired of begging people for a job and they keep turning me down. So when I go to start my own company, I can't even get the occupational license that I need to do that because I have a felony conviction. But yet you all want me to do right? So those are kind of issues that, you know, or how are police treating, why are the police even in my son's school, right? Why is it that there's more police officers in my son's school than their guidance counselors?
Wow.
Right, you feel what I'm saying?
Real, yeah.
And those are issues that are local, that we can have an impact on. And here's the deal: all we got to do is show up, bro.
Yeah.
All we got to do is show up. We had a governor who won a race in 2010 by 63,000 votes, and there was over, check this out now, over 1.7 million people of color, right, who were registered to vote that didn't bother to vote. In an election decided by 63,000 votes, and that governor for 4 years dogged people of color out in all kinds of ways. We're still feeling the impact of this governor's policy. And after, check it out now, after 4 years, this same governor runs again, and the number of people of color who was registered that didn't vote increased to over 2.4 million.
Wow.
And that election was decided by, you know how much, Johnny?
How much?
63,000 votes.
Wow, that's not even a lot.
Okay. And so let's forget about those people that don't want to vote for a minute, right? We got 900,000 returning citizens right now in Florida that can register to vote. So the last governor's election was decided by 30,000 votes. It's 900,000 of us.
Yeah.
Right? Who do you think can really who can tilt the scale either way? Yeah. We cover the gap. We got check it out now. We have a congressional in 2018. The race to send a senator to D.C. congressional race was decided by 16,000 votes. We already have 85,000 returning citizens, at least that, registered to vote.
Nice.
A congressional race decided by 16,000 votes. And presidential race, if you go, we're going to start back from when George Bush ran against Al Gore, right? That race was decided by 527 votes.
Wow. I didn't know that.
All right? Every race after that basically is decided by 100,000 votes. And so I ask you, if we have 900,000 eligible people who have been impacted by our injustice system, do we have an opportunity to impact, right, the direction of this country? Do we have an opportunity to impact and change policy? I say emphatically, yes, we do.
Indeed.
But we just got to handle our business by getting our people registered, getting our people organized, and getting them turned out. And here's the deal. It ain't about leaning left or right, Johnny. It ain't. What it's about is leaning forward into the issues that impact people with felony convictions and their family members who have loved ones that's impacted by this justice system.
That is what it's about.
We do that, we move issues. We start hanging around trying to lean left and right, then we dilute our issues. We actually contaminate our issues because we're inserting partisan politics into an issue that is pure, that at its root is very pure, and it's about fairness, it's about redemption, it's about forgiveness. I'm just saying.
No, those are pauses I can see, but you're absolutely right about, sometimes we get caught up in the political ideologies about what needs to change, that we don't change anything at all. And meanwhile, people suffer. While we argue, our people are suffering. While we're trying to decide which bill should be passed first, where our people, you know, and our family members are continuing to be harmed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some
pass
ways?
the doggone bill, man.
Pass the.
Just pass the bill.
I was out at a social distance rally yesterday saying the same thing. Just pass the bill. Oh, you had one job. It's to pass the bill. That's it. Pass the bill.
Yeah.
So Desmond, how can people reach you, man? You're doing so much work, man. You're working, you know, you're chair Floridians for Fair Democracy. You know, you're guest writing. You know, I have posts. You're doing a ton of different things. You know, and then you're also finding time to hand deliver, you know, PPE equipment all over, you know, Florida, the state of Florida. You know, definitely how we get in contact with you. But how do you? I'm going to ask you where do you find your energy and motivation from, but I think you're going to say something that we started with as far as our people never get a day off, you know? It's like, you know?
Well, I know you're not asking me how I find the energy, because as much as you and others be running around, bro, I tell you, I'm trying to figure out how you all have the energy. You know, I feel like an old man, you know? Yeah, but if people want to connect with me, man, they can always hit me up on Twitter at Desmond Meade. Of course, I'm on Instagram too as well.
Yeah, I know. You need to follow me back on Instagram, man. I follow you. Follow me back, man. There you go.
Oh, hold up, man. Don't tell me I haven't followed you back, Johnny. For real?
Let me see.
Out there.
I'm joking.
We gonna blame that on Sheena, Johnny.
Yeah. Nah, it's all love, man. You don't need to follow me.
But I'm gonna make sure I handle that.
Conversation. So.
You know, listen, let me tell you something. I just learned just the other day. Hey, I heard Kim Kardashian tweeted me, and I didn't even know that either.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, bro. For real, man. Hey, listen.
You gotta plug in, man.
I'm just trying to learn this, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn this, but no, they could definitely. And then Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, I'll go on Facebook as well. You know, and then our website. It's www.floridarrc.com. Right. And that's floridarrc.com. They can check us out on Facebook. Make sure they like the page. They get updated, man. We doing some mad crazy things, man, for these next few months, man. You know, one of the things that I was thinking about the other day, right, is that part of shifting the narrative about people with felony convictions, right? And I think it's how we do our work, right? Just like, you know, with you, you know, you got a little swag to your game, bro. You know, that people with felony convictions, we don't got to walk around with our head down. You know what I'm saying? Like we wearing the scarlet leather of shame, and that's how we used to be. I mean, I ran across during the campaign people who didn't even tell their wives or their significant other that they even had a felony conviction because they were so ashamed of it. You know, but people like me and you, man, part of the work that we do is how do we make this thing cool? How do we make the fact that, yeah, we made mistakes, but we came up out of that, right? We came up out of the pits of hell, you know what I'm saying? And we have taken our pain and turning it into a passion that serves a purpose that changes policies, right? Those are my new 4 Ps right there, right? And how we representing that in such a way that people will be like, I don't need to be embarrassed to say that I've been impacted by the justice system. I don't need to be embarrassed to say I'm formerly incarcerated. I don't need to be embarrassed to say I'm a returning citizen. So we putting some swag in being a returning citizen, bro. You know what I'm saying? And think that, yeah, we could look good, we could dress good. You know what I'm saying? We could have a little bling, that we could have a little swag to us because we're just like everybody else. But we ain't no different.
Nice.
We ain't no different. And so, so we're going to be doing some things, you know, like we did some things with the bikers a few weeks ago. We did a ride for racial justice. We had a few hundred bikers hang out with us, man, you know, rolling with the outlaws and the 1%ers and all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
You know, just rolling with these folks, like, you know, because they're standing up for racial justice. These coming together. This is a beautiful part, right? That there were Spanish people, there were white people, there were black people, there were people who were conservative, there were people who were progressive. There were people who were returning citizens. There were some who were not, but had family. But all of them said, you know what? We may have difference of opinions or difference of backgrounds, but for this one thing about racial justice in this country, we're going to stand up together for it, right? And we're willing to ride together. We're willing to ride together to lift that up and to encourage people to actually, because the first place we stopped was at the supervisor of elections office. And then the second place we stopped was at the courthouse. And basically that message was that if you show up on election day to the polls, right, then we can make justice show up for us in the courts.
Yeah, nice.
You know? Yeah.
Well, you're going to see me down there because we're looking at, we're looking at, Florida still has solitary confinement on their books, man. And, I tell people all the time that, not all the time, but I guess recently, like we're very aware of police brutality because of the cameras and the cell phones that we have, but inside walls, man, there's little to no cameras. And people can only imagine, if you think this is bad, like you can only imagine what goes on behind these walls, where people are literally buried alive, So when we think about violence and brutality, yes, let's definitely address police brutality, but no one understands that that brutality is sort of like within the veins of the system, and we see it everywhere. And when we see it the most is where we can't see, right? Where there's little transparency, there's little accountability. And, from my own personal experience of seeing people handcuffed, get thrown down the steps, Desmond shared his experiences, like, so like to getting folks to, let's look at this moment, but let's use the moment as a teaching moment also. So, hey, the entire system harms people, and violence, at the hands of the system, it always come physical. It comes with turning people down and creating an environment where people don't even feel included back in the same society that they're told that you now belong to. So really getting people to challenge this notion of violence and what it really looks like beyond just physical. There's financial violence, right? There's all of these layers, and, but Florida, you'll see more of me. And I'll say this, I'll never probably ever visit Florida again without making sure that I check in with you and Sheena and others on your team to make sure, that
oh, most definitely, bro.
What it is.
Hey, but let me ask you a question.
Yes, please.
Especially because a lot of what you're saying really, resonated, right? How do you respond though when, for instance, during like the lockdowns, right? I won't even say lockdown. When the states were like shutting down a lot of activities, right? And people were complaining that they couldn't like move around the way they want to move around without masks, and they said, "Man, feel like we're in prison or something," right? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so there's two responses that people usually get from me. On one side, it feels almost trivial to compare stay-at-home sheltering orders with solitary confinement. But on another level, there's an opportunity for me to actually educate you in a way about solitary that before maybe you would not have been able to feel before. So to your point earlier about making people feel like, hey, like if your son was there, how would you feel? What would you do? It's like the same thing now with folks like, wow, I've been like in my house for 30 days and I forget what day it is and I have to get out. I'm cooped up, so and sort of, et cetera. But getting, folks to really understand, hey, this is only this is nothing in comparison to what actual solitary looks and feels like. But it has given this opportunity to kind of segue into the conversation about solitary. Now, what we saw on the other end was that people were, being locked down on the outside, but then corrections also responded with solitary confinements. What we found was that people were reporting headaches and being put in solitary. People were covering their faces because Fauci's on TV telling everybody to cover their faces, but Officer Davis just gave you a misbehavior report because you put your t-shirt over your face because department policy says you can't cover your face. So we saw people actually being placed in solitary as a result of COVID-19, and now as states are beginning to re-enter, I'll use Indiana as an example. the people are still incarcerated. So in Indiana, the Indiana women's prison, those women are still being held in solitary, despite the fact that, or solitary and in lockdown, while the state is re-entering. So part of the fight is twofold. One, to advance, right? But the other to make sure that we don't lose any of the reforms that we've already made thus far.
Okay.
COVID-19 doesn't give people political cover to form even more restrictive policies that we may spend years trying to unravel. So, so that's sort of like some of the thinking that I've been experiencing, myself, talking to colleagues, and also talking to other advocates in different, working on different pieces of this puzzle that we're all working on called mass incarceration, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but that was a good question. I think as in relation to that, we've just been really vocal about making sure that there's this clear distinction between medical isolation and punitive or administrative isolation.
Yeah.
Making sure that we urge governors, and kind of pressure governors to make sure that these correctional settings don't use solitary confinement as a containment strategy for COVID-19, and that they also decarcerate as many people as possible, or decarcerate and de-densify, right? So let out as many people as possible. We know that many folks can already come out, right? Like, folks who are up for medical parole, medical releases, clemency, people who are already up just for their regular paroles, but have been hit at the board for 2-3 times already, and have already served their or just being held. So definitely starting with those folks, and of course for the folks who will not come out, to de-densify and create space, within those institutions, so they're not as crowded as we know a lot of these systems are. So that's constantly evolving, and it looks different from state to state, as you can know and imagine already, but it takes all of us, Desmond. It takes all of us, because not only does it take to ensure that people are not in solitary and we don't harm and we don't expose people to the harm of solitary, but also that when they come to society, that they're also, assimilate as much as possible. Although I would say that some of us never survive incarceration, right? Like even you and I, right? We're talking about, we got a little swag, things like that, but there are things about us that we may never get back because of our experience. Talking about, cops taking, harming you like that, and that's something that you just never forget. So some of these scars are inside and not necessarily outside. So just an honor to work with you on this side. I always leave inspired. When I was in Florida recently, I was just inspired to hear from you and to see some of the challenges, and I appreciate you always investing in me and for taking the time to come on here and help me utilize this platform to do exactly what I'm going to do, and that is to further our work, and that kind of thing. So I'll be sending out Desmond's contact information, his contact information in the sense of his social media and the website. Of course, definitely text the word register to 82623. And we'll be back here in another 2 weeks. Desmond, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share with folks?
Man, first of all, man, I want to just tell you how honored I am to sit down. The only thing we missing is actually the the fireplace, right? So we had this Fireside Chat, man. But man, it's an honor just hanging out with you, bro. Just proud of just your efforts, man. Your story is inspirational. Your work is inspirational, man. And I know that there's so many lives out there that you're touching right now. And I just want to encourage you, man, to keep pushing forward and keeping your eye on the prize, on that North Star, man. And the world is going to be a better place because of you, man. And any of your folks, man, that's in Florida, man, make sure that they holler at me. They need to hit me up, connect with FRC, man. We are home. We are the home, the state-based home. Like right now in Key West, we got a chapter down in Key West. You know what I'm saying? You in Pensacola, we got a chapter there too. We got 20 chapters across the state. And so folks should be encouraged to plug in with us, man, and get involved in some of the work that we're doing, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're really going to be, like I said, engaged in some crazy stuff, good crazy stuff the next few months. And so, yeah, get these people registered, man, and let's change the world.
Nice.
About it.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you stopping in. So everyone, Desmond Meade, Executive Director over at and President over at the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition out of Florida. Thank you so much, my brother. This will be recorded. Well, it was already recorded. We'll reshare it, when the link is up and share it also on our Facebook. And if you registered for this, we'll also share that information. So thank you so much, everyone. Peace, love, and have a great weekend and enjoy. Peace and love, everybody.
Peace.
Bye. Peace.